Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a special edition of Big Apple Hockey. As we were doing a little earlier today, I'm unavailable later, and Mark Williams is sick, so I'm just kind of getting ahead of it so we can at least put out some content today and do a little bit of a show for you guys today. Now I got to start with because I love chirping Mark Williams. It's just something that I live for, and he doesn't have COVID, he doesn't have the flu. It just seems like he has a virus. And I don't know if you guys know, like, you ever see like the stereotypical, reels on Instagram where like, a wife will be like me when I'm sick and she's still going around like doing everything. And then like when the guy or husband's sick, he's just with a cold, he's like laying there in bed looking like he's dying. And I think that's what Mark's doing right now. For me, if you have the norovirus and you're vomiting and you're running to the toilet every 2 seconds, then I get that you can't really be on. But if he has just a little bit of a fever and a cough, it doesn't exert much energy to just sit there and talk to everybody. So just wanted to razz Mark a little bit for not showing up and putting in the work. Instead, he's in bed probably watching cartoons. But anyway, I've got a good show for you today. Talk a little bit about the Islanders, talk about the Rangers, playoff pushes that are full swing as we approach the four nation break coming up here in about a week or so. So kind of start with the Islanders. Last night they picked up an impressive win over the Golden Knights, 2-1 victory. Ilya Sorokin once again is really playing like he's prime Dominik Hasek right now. He's been fabulous over this, 8-1 stretch the Islanders have in their last 9. And now the Islanders are 3 points back of the last wild card spot with some games in hand. So, it's one of those things where, you all know the Islanders look like they were kind of dead to rights maybe about, 2 weeks ago or so. And, now they're on this stretch and now they're, legitimate contenders to make the playoffs possibly. So they gave themselves a chance here, and hopefully they can keep the train rolling. And they got 2 tough games before the break against the Winnipeg Jets and the Minnesota Wild. So those are obviously huge games. I'm assuming it's a back-to-back, so I think Sorokin is going to probably play both. They did give him a break on the second half of the back-to-back when they started Jacob Skarek in his first NHL start against the Florida Panthers in their building. What a way to welcome a guy into the NHL, right? Playing against the defending champs in Florida. And he played good, but, in that game, if Sorokin would have played that game, realistically, they probably win because they were up 3-2 at some point. Skarek letting some goals that Sorokin wouldn't have. And, now you're talking maybe the Islanders would be on a 9-game winning streak at this point. But nothing to do about it anymore. It's in the past. I'm just saying I think this weekend, Friday, Saturday, I think Sorokin's going to play both, being that, after Saturday, they're off for 2 weeks for the break. So he probably will play in back-to-back games there and try to collect, 4 points. So, before kind of changing gears and talking about the very important Ranger game tonight, when you look at what the Islanders are faced with here is, you have a team that is obviously really hot. You have a couple teams ahead of you still, but when you're at a situation where you're 3 points out of a playoff spot with so much time left in the season, all things considered, 30 games, you do have a realistic shot to get in. At this point, they just need to, if they can win another, let's say 3 in a row, 4 in a row, or 6 out of 7, that should put them to a point where they're tied for a spot or maybe even in one. And that from that point on, it's kind of just keeping pace with all the other teams. So we'll see what transpires. And obviously, the trade deadline coming up and on March 6th or 7th, that's going to be a huge point in the season. What do they do? I kind of say if they remain, 4 points out or less, I think Lou's going to buy. I don't think he's going to sell Brock Nelson at this point. That's just my gut there telling me. But we'll see what transpires. But they're in a good spot. Now with the Rangers playing the Boston Bruins tonight at the Garden, this is a huge game. This is a huge game. Mike Walsh saying here, beat them Bruins. Because right now the Bruins hold the last wild card spot. I believe they're tied with Tampa Bay actually, but the Bruins have the tiebreaker, so they're the second wild card. The Rangers trail the Bruins by 6 points. If the Rangers were to lose to Boston tonight, now you're trailing the Bruins by 8 points. That's a lot. That's a lot of points, especially given right now where you get so many 3-point games and so many teams that are in the hunt play each other. Like the Bruins play the Lightning. The Lightning are ahead of the Bruins are in the Lightning ahead of the Rangers as well. So it's like one team's going to pick up points. Maybe one team gets up a point in the overtime, picks up a loser point. So 8 points would be a big hole for the Rangers to crawl out of. If that does indeed happen, the Bruins would jump the Red Wings, and the Red Wings would be the second wild card, in which case the Rangers would be 7 points behind them. But still, you don't want to lose this game against Boston tonight. You have to beat them. I'm not going to call it a must-win game because I think it's a little too early for that. But it's close. It is close because again, you don't want to go 8 points behind a team you're trying to catch. So. On the flip side, if the Rangers can win, obviously that would be big. Because I think I would say anything like 6 or less out of a playoff spot, I think is still manageable. But if they were to lose and go back by Boston by 8, and then maybe the Rangers got Columbus and Pittsburgh, I think as well before the break. Columbus is another team that they're chasing, so that's going to be a tough game. So you just want to try to make up as much ground as possible and put yourself in a good position where after the Four Nations break, when the season resumes, you could really make your run. So, I think while obviously it's not a daunting, like a death sentence if they were to lose the Bruins tonight, it would be hard for the Rangers to kind of climb out of the hole when you're talking 7-8 points back. But I think the one thing I will say is the Rangers with J.T. Miller, he looks like he's a player that's kind of like a man on a mission right now. He's had a good start to his second go around with the Rangers. Maybe that's going to rub off on the rest of the team. But I just wonder, I don't know if Miller's the last Ranger acquisition. If the Rangers can kind of win a couple of games here, I think they may make a couple more trades for another third line player with Edstrom out for a while. I could see them making more additions. If it goes the other way, and maybe they lose a couple of these games here leading up to the Four Nations break, then I think Ryan Lindgren's probably gone. Although I think most Ranger fans agree with me, he should probably be gone regardless, even if they start winning a bunch of games. But he could be looked to be moved. Chris Kreider's name has been out there for the majority of the year. I don't know if that's something that the Rangers would consider, but so we'll see which direction it goes. David said, "Did I read Barzal's out for the season?" He's not out for the season. The only thing the Islanders mentioned is that he's out indefinitely. So what that means, I don't know. Could he be back in a month? End of the regular season, I'm not sure. And with Lou Lamoriello, he doesn't divulge specific information on injuries. So that's all we know. In the win against Tampa, he blocked a shot, and for the replay I saw, it looked like it hit him right above the knee, not like actually on the shin guard. So I wouldn't think it's a tibia or fibia situation. If it hit him above the knee on the thigh pad there, I don't know what could possibly have went wrong that he's out indefinitely in that spot, but it was hard to tell. Maybe it did catch him lower, closer to the knee, and he did something to his kneecap, or who knows. But yeah, so no, not out for the season, but it is possible. Jay's saying that you have one benefit and a bunch of teams above them. They still have multiple games head to head against the Islanders, Columbus. That is true. Those are going to be important games. Mark on our last telecast mentioned the Ranger game against the Islanders, I think on the 25th of February. So that's going to be a big game. And the Rangers play Columbus. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Columbus is one of their games before the Four Nations break. So that game is going to loom large too. So yeah, games that you definitely have to win. Saying that JT is hyped on adrenaline. And that's true. I mean, I think, eventually once the kind of like the I don't know if you want to call it like honeymoon phase wears off, but I do think he was a great fit for the team. The only negative you could say about it is that he's going to be what, 30, 32 or 33, and he has 5 more years left. But I still think it was a good pickup for the Rangers. He's playing really well. I don't think he's going to be a guy where his game just falls off a cliff in a year and a half from now. So I think it was a good move. Nash, I think they had certain players similar to Nashville. Yeah. Are you specifically saying they're going to try to acquire players from Nashville, or they're just going to add players that Nashville did in the offseason? But either way, I think Chris Drury's going to make moves here if the Rangers win a couple of games. And also, too, the reality of the situation is there's still a lot of time left between now and the deadline. Deadline is March 6th, I believe. So, a lot, when the season resumes, that's what, like 2 weeks until the deadline or a little less. So a lot can transpire in that time. You win a couple of games and you're maybe in a spot or very close to it and you're buyers. You lose a couple of games and then maybe you become a seller. So it's still just so early. You don't know what's going to happen yet in terms of teams and, whether they're going to be buyers or sellers. These injuries soon. Yeah. The thing about the Islanders, though, is like, it's different with Columbus with Kirill Marchenko, far and away their best forward, out for 6 to 8 weeks. Sean Monahan out. But the Islanders, as good as Barzal is, this isn't new territory for them with Barzal being hurt. The year that they acquired Horvat, when Barzal went down shortly after, the Islanders got in the playoffs, and I think there was something like 12-5-1 without him. So they proved then that they can win without Barzal. And then even this year, they were 9-7-4 without Barzal. So, by NHL accounting, that's still over 500. So Barzal, as weird as it sounds and as good as he is, the Islanders missing him isn't a death sentence where some other teams, again, Columbus missing Marchenko and Monahan, that could be a death sentence. So the Islanders are equipped to play without Barzal. So, perfect world. You want him in the lineup? Absolutely. I'm not going to act like it's no big deal, but they have won and been successful without him in the lineup. So that's why I don't think it's such an issue that he's hurt. See what we can get for Adam Fox. Listen, I think that there's probably a 0% chance that the Rangers would trade Adam Fox, even if they lost the next 6 games in a row and it was clear they were going to miss the playoffs. I just don't see that happening. And I love how you call him Adam Foe there, like fake. But I don't think he's going anywhere, Mikey. I think they're keeping him around for the long haul. For the Rangers to move Adam Fox, he would legitimately have to ask to be traded. That's one guy I think right now is untouchable for them. And I get the frustration. Yeah, I do think that sometimes Fox does play a little bit soft, and he's also not the fastest player. So I think when you have a guy like that that's not a burner, it can kind of give the appearance that maybe he's not trying as hard or he's lackadaisical. But Adam Fox hasn't been as good defensively this year as he had been the last couple of years. So I'll definitely give you that. You're certainly allowed to have your opinions, and some of it's warranted. But yeah, and he's just, unfortunately for you, and I say that because I think most Ranger fans don't want him to go anywhere, that Fox moving is something that's a non-starter. Yes, I am actually a little bit, because you saw how Sorokin started the year really hot. They rode him a little bit, and then I would say he had a month stretch there, or maybe a little more, where he was average or even a little below average. So that point's not unwarranted, but right now he is playing like prime Hasek. He's a wall right now, and eventually, like anything else, you're gonna cool off, as we talked about J.T. Miller before. But even if Sorokin can, because right now he's playing like over this stretch, he's at like a 957 save percentage or something along those lines during the streak. That's not sustainable. But even if he dips back a little bit and he gives, like 925 the year that he was a Vezina candidate, I think that's still good enough for the Islanders to sneak in. With that said, Hogberg, who actually looked pretty good, as he's saying, in the backup role, he's supposed to be back, according to Lamoriello, right around the time the Four Nations break ends. So if he's back, he's proved he could be a serviceable backup. The only thing that can't happen is, and again, I mentioned at the start when Carrick played against Florida, they didn't lose the game from him. You could clearly tell he was nervous, but he's not a guy you want to be giving important starts to when Sorokin rests. But yeah, I mean, if Sorokin can keep this on for even a little longer, the Islanders are going to be in a good spot. Wicked saying, I know Lou probably buy now, but long-term wise, that'd be such a horrible move. Care about the short term. And this right here is a hot button topic amongst Islander fans. And I kind of tweeted about this out just earlier. Fans kind of look at things as, black and white. Okay, the Islanders aren't going to win a Stanley Cup even if they get in, which is likely true. However, the players in that room, and this goes for any team, not just the Islanders, the players in the room believe, they're on an 8-1 stretch. They're 3 points out of a playoff spot. If Lou Lamoriello were to, because I know fans are beating the drum to sell Palmieri, sell Nelson, the message that would send to the players, like we're 8-1, we fought tooth and nail, 3 points out, we're feeling good, and you're going to sell pieces. That would just be the players in that room would be like, all right, well, our general managers gave up on us when we're playing the best hockey of the season. So I don't think fans realize that. So that would affect the players immensely. So that's why it would never ever happen that Lou would sell right now. And specifically Brock Nelson, Wicked, I'll talk to you and really any Islander fan listening. What I tweeted was, if Lou Lamoriello re-signs Brock Nelson to let's just say a 3-year extension or whatever, or longer, and he just finishes his career as an Islander in general, he's going to be first all time in games played. He's gonna go all the way up to third in goals, fourth in points. You're talking like definitely lock for Islanders Hall of Fame when you have those kind of numbers, and maybe even get his number retired. The fact that fans just want to kind of toss him around so they can get a first round pick anywhere from 20 to 32 and a C prospect by in the form of like a guy like William Dufour, like that type of level. I got news for you guys. That's not going to do anything for the Islanders' long-term future. That a return like that's not just going to magically turn them into a juggernaut. The chances are of hypothetically, let's just say they got the team that traded for Nelson owns the 25th pick. The chances of that player having any impact on the Islanders going forward aren't great. It's not great. I obviously I don't have any numbers to back this up, and yeah, of course, Brock Nelson was a 30th overall pick himself. But the chances of that pick becoming an impact player for the Islanders are probably very slim. And then again, getting a C prospect in the mold of a guy like William Dufour, that's not going to help them either. So do you want to trade a guy like Brock Nelson, who can go down as one of the best Islanders of all time, for pieces that aren't even going to matter for the team going forward? So me personally, I don't trade Brock Nelson. I keep him right now. You're in it. And the caveat is this: if Brock Nelson indicated that he's not going to resign, let's just say Lou makes one of his best offers prior to the deadline and Nelson declines it, then you move him. Because then you don't want to lose him for nothing. But if Nelson's willing to stay and he wants to stay, trading him for a return that's likely going to be very underwhelming, to me, doesn't make sense at all. So that's just my opinion. Now again, let's just say Minnesota, a team that's been rumored to be interested in Nelson. Like if they would give us Marco Rossi in a first round pick, or even Rossi in a second round pick, then yeah, I make that move because like Rossi's already a 50-point player and he's young. But I'm not going to trade him for a late first and a prospect that's like a no better than any of the Islanders' middling prospects. To me, this doesn't make sense. So, and again, David, yeah, I know. Listen, I just said there are exceptions. There are guys that you get late in the draft that end up being steals. But again, I would say mathematically that the numbers probably don't, say that the majority of the time guys drafted in that selection are actually going to amount to anything. Because I would probably say no. I mean, just for example, anybody who's listening, if you're older and enough to remember 2007 when the Islanders traded for Ryan Smith, the Oilers traded their captain Ryan Smith, and they got back Ryan O'Mara, who was an Islander draft pick, literally amounted to nothing. Robert Nilsson was out of the league in, I don't know, a couple of years after, and even when he was there, he didn't live up to his expectation. And the guy the Oilers drafted first overall with the Islanders pick, I believe, was a guy named a defenseman, Alex Plant. And he literally did nothing. So, again, I don't think trading Nelson for what's going to end up being, nothing significant doesn't make any sense for me to do, especially when he's had the career he's had playing with the Islanders. Mike saying Mika stays at wing. Drury's trade for Luke Kunin. Yeah, honestly, Luke Kunin is a good player, Mike. I think he's one of those bottom six players, and especially with Edstrom out, he's a guy that that could help in that area. You mentioned Josh Anderson. One guy actually is Jake Evans on Montreal. It's getting a lot of attention. He's a little bit of a spark plug. He's having a good year, so that's another bottom six option. But the Rangers have competition. Guys like him and Ryan Donato from Chicago, they're being heavily sought after come the deadline. But yeah, a guy like that would be an under the radar pickup. Just going to kind of go through some of these comments here, being it's just me, kind of be more interactive with you guys. Feel like I'm Preds fan account today. I think Drury looks into Novak. I like Novak a lot, actually, J.E., even Evangelista, but I feel like the Predators may go through a retool, and the younger guys like that probably make more sense to keep around. So I think they would look good in Ranger Blue, or really a lot of teams for that matter. But I think Nashville's probably more inclined to, and I know they just signed these guys, so it would be like weird, but I think they'd be more inclined to moving Marchessault or Stamkos than guys like Novak or Evangelista. So we'll see. And seven, when you lose a winning environment, yeah, like Buffalo, Buffalo. That's a whole nother topic. How no one came to Tage Thompson's defense. That was disgusting. That team's a mess. Them along with the New York Jets football have the longest playoff drought in sports. I think it's like 11 years or so. So that team has a lot of soul searching to do. May keep the vets, but traded Dobson. Yes and no, because Noah Dobson, yes, he had a 70-point year last year. He was very good offensively, but defensively, he's still lacking. And this year, his defense is still lacking, and now his offense dropped off. He's had a tough year. But the thing is with Dobson, Jay, he still has a ton of value. I mean, he's 24 years old. Defensemen like him, they don't grow on trees. And he's the one piece that the Islanders could trade without having to give up one of their top prospects like Cole Yzerman or Danny Nelson that can return a lot. And I think that's why most fans are including Dobson in trade proposals, because they can get a really good offensive player for him. And then also, too, like I acknowledge that guys like D'Angelo, Peruvinich, and Boquist, they're lesser talents, but what you're seeing right now is those guys fit Waz's system better. It's no coincidence that since Dobson and Pulock went out and these guys came in, that the Islanders' defense is rushing the puck up the ice better, transitioning it, and just moving the puck entirely at a better rate. So I think some fans are like, maybe that makes a guy like Dobson or Pullock expendable, and that's where that comes from. Instead of saying, "Hey, Dobson right now, he's your Keandre," and that that's pretty accurate. Steve S saying Lou is never sold, and this is true. Lou does not sell. It would have to, the Islanders would have to be, I would say, at least 8+ points out at the deadline for him to sell. He just doesn't believe in it. And then also too, when you look at their makeup of their team, you have Barzal locked in long term. You have Horvat locked in long term. You have Sorokin locked in long term. So you have these guys that make a lot of money locked in. You can't really rebuild. Same thing with Rangers giving Shesterkin that deal. You gave him that deal, so it doesn't make sense to strip it down. So I think Lou looks at it as, well, I'm not going to sell because if I retool on the fly, my team can compete again next year. And I think that's what his reasoning for not selling, because the rest of the players on the roster doesn't really allow for it. RR, yes, he's a good candidate in Nashville to be dealt. I think that he's going to be a guy that determines where he goes, and Nashville, if he approaches Barry, I think Barry Trotz will accommodate him, and that's just embarrassing. Nor Sanchez, and thank you, Snapper. I know I mentioned Alex Plant before. As you see there, basically no NHL experience. But he was saying if you want to go through rebuild, you have to fire Lou. It won't happen. That's true. Lou isn't going to. He's not going to do it willingly. Even though and also too, look at his age. He's older. He knows that. He doesn't have. He doesn't have all these years to go through a rebuild and see it through. He still probably wants to win. One more time before he kind of hangs him up. So I don't ever envision him selling unless the Islanders really, really drop out of it. Who's the next team to make a move, and does it happen between the four nations? If you're talking about strictly Islanders or Rangers, I would say the Rangers, honestly. I just get that vibe. However, I don't think it's going to happen before the four nations. It's still a week or so before the tournament, so you could certainly still see some more moves. But whole league. So if it's whole league, I'm gonna go the Sabres, and I say that because, well, two things. One, if you kind of believe Kevin Weeks, I know he's cryptic at times, but he had his typical eye emojis with like a street in Buffalo. So it was very cryptic, didn't expand on that. So everyone's saying, okay, well, maybe there's a move from the Sabres coming. And then not only that, it's just the Sabres, while they've won 4 in a row, they're still the one team in the East that you can say they're out. They're not making the playoffs. I think what transpired with the Thompson hit and no one reacting to it, I just think that shows that there's changes needed, and I think they're looking to shake things up. And there's a lot of talk about how Dylan Cousins has his name's been out there. I saw TSN said the other day that Calgary has a lot of interest in him, so that's something that could transpire at some point. So I would say the Sabres make the next move, and before the four nations, I'm gonna say no, but we'll see. I could be wrong, and who knows? Maybe the last 2 weeks there's been big trades on Friday nights, right? The Rantanen trade, and then last Friday, J.T. Miller and the Canucks made the Marcus Pettersson trade. So who knows? Maybe on Friday there's another trade. But I did read an article from Chris Johnston yesterday. Basically just outlines, what happens during the Four Nations break, and there is no roster freeze, and teams can still make trades and everything. But he said that his thought is there's not going to be much trades made during the actual break. He thinks there will be a lot of conversations going on between general managers during that time that plant the seeds for trades when the break ends and leading up to the deadline. But he made it seem like he didn't think that there was going to be a whole lot of like wheeling and dealing while while the break is going on. One of the reasons he cited for that was just because like the league wants the attention on this tournament, and he doesn't think general managers making these big trades and ton of trades while it's going on, it'll take eyes away from it. So the league wants it to be a big focus. So that's why he doesn't expect for a lot of wheeling and dealing going on. He said, I'd rather bet on age upside over all the players or to reach their peak. Yeah, but I don't know. It's for me in certain situations, yes, but a guy like Brock Nelson who's been an Islander his whole career and like it outlined where he can finish on their all-time list if he stays. I just think there's a little bit of loyalty rewarded in that. And, also with the salary cap going up immensely, not only is it going up a lot this offseason, but I'm sure you guys saw the outline for the next few years. And the cap is going up significantly. So if the Islanders give Brock Nelson a 4-year deal, 3 years from now, yeah, he'll be what, 30, 36 or so. But he's not like re-signing him is not going to hold back the Islanders from being able to acquire or younger players. It's just not. So I don't really see any downside to keeping him. Again, you're gonna miss out on a guy maybe picked 24th, 25th overall. And also, too, I don't know if you guys saw Bob McKenzie. We all know he retired from being like a mainstream insider, but he's still very much involved in the whole draft scouting aspect of it. And he said from picks like 15 and 20 on that this draft is a relatively weak draft. So here, especially after hearing that, then yeah, why are you going to rush to trade Nelson to get a pick when the bottom half of that draft are weak and they're likely not going to really become NHL impactful players. So and again, everyone's have their own opinions, but when you combine all that, for me, it doesn't make sense for them to trade Nelson. I would feel differently if they were out of it. Again, if they were 10 points out of a playoff spot right now, Wicked, then yeah, I think trading him is a no-brainer. But you don't trade one of your best players when you're as hot as you are and you're realistically in striking distance between a playoff spot. It just sends a terrible message to the guys in the room. And while NHL players know that it's a business, there's also circumstances that make it okay. Like clearly, guys on the San Jose Sharks, when Michael Granlund got traded, they're not upset. They know they're not making the playoffs. They know that he's a free agent. They understand that it's a business. But in a situation like this, you're 3 points out. You have what's going to be 3 games in hand on the Bruins today. So let's say the Rangers win tonight. You trail the Bruins by 3 points, but you have 3 games in hand on them. You're 8-1 your last 9, and then you trade one of your best players. Anders Lee and the guys in that room, they're like, Lou, what the hell? You're just throwing in the towel. It would just be so demoralizing. You just don't do it in that situation. Again, you do it when you're 10 points out and you have no shot at making the playoffs. The players would understand that, but not in this specific instance. So, Snapper saying, I found out recently Garson almost traded Barzal Sorokin in the first Shane. Yeah, that would have been. I think I do remember that. That would be absolutely brutal. That would have been terrible. And I wanted Duchesne back in the day when Colorado was first looking to move him. And the Islanders weren't interested, but in retrospect, that would have been a terrible trade. It's amazing. Lose a few in a row. Yeah, you're right, Jay. It's so close right now that things can change. And my fear for both the Rangers and the Islanders is like because all these teams, Tampa Bay, Ottawa, Boston, Detroit, Columbus, they're so close to one another. And you're always playing the other team, seeming like every other night. One team's always going to pick up points, and the other gets 1 point. So when you're talking, you have let's just say you have a 7-point deficit. it's going to be really hard to make up those points. So yeah, it's really, really critical right now to bank as many points as you can because they become harder and harder to pick up as the season gets draws more near to the end. Nelson extremely careless in the defensive zone, more concerned with getting up ice. Well, I don't want him traded if you want to stay. You know what? I do agree. Sometimes it does look like that, but he's actually a pretty responsible player defensively, which is one of the reasons why Bill Guerin added him to the Four Nations roster over guys like Cole Caulfield and Tage Thompson because he felt that he's more versatile and he's a more well-rounded player. So, yeah, while that does look like the case sometimes, Nelson's actually a very responsible two-way forward. So, yeah, and again, this last point, if he wants to stay, I think it comes down to him. If he says he wants to stay, Lou's gonna trust in that, and he's gonna keep him. If Nelson says that he's unsure, Lou still may keep him. If Nelson says he's definitely leaving, then yeah, I think Lou will move him. But if Nelson decides he wants to stay, he's gonna stay. So. I mean, at this point in time, right now, it looks that way. But Johnny, a lot can change. The Islanders can lose these next two games to Winnipeg and Minnesota, and all of a sudden, from being 3 points out, they go to 7, and then maybe the Rangers beat Boston today. They beat Pittsburgh. They beat Columbus, and then all of a sudden, the Rangers look to be in better shot. So at this specific moment, yes, the Islanders look like they have a better shot, but that could change really quickly. What if he said he wants to stay? Again, that's something that Lou's going to have to roll the dice on. If he says he wants to stay, but he's not in a rush to sign the deal, that's going to be a conversation. Lou's a very loyal guy, and I think that players respect him so much that they would give him the full transparency and honesty to him because I think it's deserved both ways. With respect, so hopefully Nelson would do the right thing. But yeah, again, that's something that I think they're that Lou and Nelson's agent, those are the conversations that they're going to be having. And one thing Elliot Friedman said recently, he talked about how no one wants to talk about Lou or Nelson because they don't want to cross him. So I think that there's stuff going behind the scenes where Lou's actively working at re-signing Nelson because how he is. He doesn't let anything leak out. He just doesn't. So it wouldn't be surprising me if I looked at my phone, 20 minutes from now and you see like a Twitter, on X, the Islanders announced they re-signed Nelson. That's just how Lou operates. He operates in the dark. He doesn't tip his hat. Yeah. Or Dobson for Riley Smith. I think they would burn UBS to the ground. That would be pitiful. But in all seriousness, no, the Rangers and Islanders, I think the last trade they ever made together was the Islanders traded Yuri Niemi to the Rangers. I don't know how long ago that was. Maybe 2009 or 2010. But that's the last time they made a trade together. So that's how rare that happens. So. One interesting thing that when you look at it that could kind of affect how the trade deadline goes, there's really, aside from the Buffalo Sabres, what team in the East is legitimately out of it? Pittsburgh, Philly. So there's just so many teams that I think may still believe that they don't sell, and maybe this takes shape closer to the deadline. At that point, they will, and everyone will know for sure if you're a buyer or a seller. But right now, aside from Buffalo, can't really say anybody's out of it. Yeah, most likely Pittsburgh, Philly, they're not making the playoffs, but even them, they're still, yeah. And you guys are right. They're not going to make the playoffs, but they're not the Sabres where you could say it's 100% definitely not happening. So I wonder how active these teams would be in terms of being sellers. Would the Penguins trade a guy like Ricard Raquel. Yeah, I wonder if they lose a couple more games. That's certainly a possibility. Yeah, but the difference is here though. This was a move made in the offseason. Tampa Bay just chose not to re-sign Steven Stamkos. They didn't trade Stamkos last year when they were, in a playoff position or fighting for a playoff position. So I don't think you can compare it. I mean, I get what you're trying to say, but it's apples to oranges. Tampa Bay just opted not to re-sign him. They didn't trade him, so that's why it's different. So yeah, it's like Brock Nelson's a Hall of Fame player, but again, you don't move a guy like him right now where your team's in a playoff race and you're not going to get anything really significant back in return. So I just think it's not a good look to move him right now. And yeah, like I said, if the Islanders go on a losing streak after 4 nations and they're 8 points out, then yeah, then sure, you talk about trading Brock Nelson, but when you have a realistic shot to make the playoffs, I just can't justify trading them. Okay. Yeah, honestly, I think this is just a case of guy who's getting a little older. He wants his number one priority is to make sure that his team is in the best position possible to go on a long playoff run. So I get the decision. Again, I think players care about this, but at the same time, it's not the Olympics. It's kind of just like a made-up tournament. So I do understand why Peter Angelo decided he wasn't going to play. Washington will be the first week after the playoffs started. I was saying Ristolainen. Yeah. Stammer also won cups. His job was done. No, I respectfully disagree. I don't think it is the same because they didn't trade him while the team was looking like they were going to make the playoffs. So me personally, I don't think you could trade a guy like that, like the Islanders situation with Nelson, unless you're out of it. It sends a bad message. And if they would get more from him, again, like if you're going to trade, if you tell me that you're going to get Brock Nelson for, Marco Rossi or even Zeev Buum on Minnesota, then yeah, you do it. But a team, whether it's Minnesota, whether it's Colorado, whether it's Winnipeg, they're not going to offer the Islanders a really good prospect. They're gonna trade them their first, which if you look, especially Winnipeg, where they are in the standings, Minnesota, it's going to be a late first, and we're not going to get back a prospect of any significance. So it's not really going to help the Islanders all that much. So, and I think Lou feels the same way. So, we'll see what transpires. But let's just put it this way: right now, 3 points out, 8-1. I think we can all pump the brakes here on Nelson talk because I just don't think he's going anywhere at the moment. Middlestad, he's right now he's Colorado's their second line center. He's young-ish. He's like, what does he have, like 50? Does he have like 50 something points or something right now? Maybe I'm giving him too much credit. Let me look that up. But that's a player where I think he's young enough where you could at least make a case for it, and then hope he brings his game to another level. But at this point, I think he is who he is. So I don't know how much his game would get better from here on in. But let me just check here. He's got 32 points in 55 games. Yeah, I mean he would be. I think he's a little underwhelming, but I would think Colorado, they need depth. I would imagine they want to keep a guy like Middlestad and then add a guy like Nelson on top of that. So I don't know if they would make that move. The one now, when talking about a hockey trade with Nelson, the one scenario where I would move Nelson is again, I don't think this is on the table anymore because I don't think Vancouver is trading Elias Pettersson. But I would have traded like Noah Dobson plus Brock Nelson in the deal for Elias Pettersson, because then you're getting back a 26-year-old who, even though his numbers have been down, that is still considered elite. So I would do that deal, like a hockey trade type. But ultimately, I think I would say no to a Nelson for Middlestat deal, just because if Middlestat is only putting up 32 points on a team like the Colorado Avalanche, who are more talented, I can't see him, putting up more points on a New York Islander team. He's not bad. I don't think his ceiling is all that much more at this point. They can buy outside of Pettersson. Who would they even target? Well, there are guys like Brock Besser, who's available, also a Canuck. The only thing is he's a pending UFA, so he would have to come with an extension. He's 27. I think he's going to be turning 28. My only trepidation with Besser is that outside of his 40 goal season last year, where he had 73 points, he's been a 55-point player, and his highest total prior to last year in terms of goals was when he scored 29 goals, and that was his rookie year, way back when. So I would be a little buyer beware on Brock Besser, but he's one guy out there. Dylan Cousins' name has been out there. I mentioned Jake Evans before, but he's more of a bottom six guy. I don't think he would really move the needle all that much. Ryan Donato, as I talked about, he could be had. So I'm just trying to go through the sellers and think of players that could be available. Now, there could be players on playoff teams that are dealt, and it's more of a hockey trade, but those are just some of the names I just came up with on the top of my head. Like saying, when will the Rangers bring up Brennan Othmann? I think they're gonna handle him with kids' gloves, and especially at this point in the season. I don't know if there's necessarily a spot for him. So I don't think you'll see him, to be honest. I think you'll see him under two circumstances. One, if the Rangers make the playoffs, teams usually bring up what they call their, black aces from the AHL, and they skate with the team. Not necessarily play, but they do get called up. So that, or the opposite, if the Rangers really fell out of the playoff race and they sold some pieces, then I think maybe he would get recalled so they can give him a look. But anything in between, I don't think you'll see Brennan Othmann this year. David, yeah, I heard that too. He's from Minnesota, and there have been rumors about Nelson too, but some of that stuff is speculation. Sometimes it ends up being true, like Thomas Vanek, when the Islanders had him, he wants to go home play in Minnesota. So sometimes that certainly happens, but who knows? I mean, if Brock Besser got traded to the Devils, for instance, which I think he'd be a good fit, I don't think he would not re-sign with the Devils unless he truly just 100% only wanted to play for the Wild. Then that's possible. I've heard Ehlers talk, but honestly, I don't see it happening. Ehlers, why I get from the standpoint that he likely won't re-sign with the Jets, but why would the Jets trade a guy who's playing at over a point per game right now when they have Stanley Cup aspirations? It doesn't make sense. This is the one case where I think it does make sense, where you unfortunately lose a guy for nothing. You're truly a Stanley Cup contender. You have a good shot at winning it all. They're not going to move him. If they lose him for nothing, so be it. But I would be absolutely shocked if the Jets traded Nikolai Ehlers. If he was available, that's a player where I think Drury and Lou should both pick up the phone and try to make that happen, because he's a very good. I mean, he's only been like a similar Besser. he's like a 55, 60-point guy. But this year he's playing on another level. Maybe it's a contract year, but what I like about Ehlers is that he's got a lot of speed. He's shifty, and he's an all-around player. Like if you look at his stats, his goals and assists are pretty similar. So I like this player a lot, and I think that he's going to get a lot of attention on July 1st. I agree with this. Sharks, Blackhawks, Predators, the Kraken may even be sellers because I don't think they're going to make it. St. Louis is a bubble team. So, yeah, I think a lot of the sellers are out west. I've heard Frederick's name. Same as Marchand, honestly, where Friedman mentioned it. I think that only happens if the Bruins fall out of it. But honestly, I don't think they will. I think that they're going to be right there to the end. I think that the Rangers, Islanders, Bruins, Lightning, Senators, I think they're all going to be there in the end. The Red Wings right now, they're in a playoff spot, but the Red Wings and the Blue Jackets, I don't know how you guys feel, but I think the Red Wings and the Blue Jackets are the two teams that are going to eventually fall out of it. And I say that with Winnipeg, it's obvious, right? I mean, Marchenko's out 6 to 8 weeks, broke his jaw. Monahan's out long term. I do believe they're getting back Boone Jenner soon, but those are two big losses. I mean, Marchenko was the highest going forward, and I think Monahan was number 2 behind him. So those are two big losses. And as far as the Red Wings go, I mean, they like the Islanders. The Red Wings have won 7 in a row. So right now they look good, but they also have looked terrible at certain points in the year. And they're a good up and coming team. Last year they just barely missed out in the playoffs, but I think the Red Wings are going to miss out too. I just something about them tells me that they're going to fall off. Done for the season. Because Othman is supposed to be a skilled, he has jam to his game, but he's supposed to be a skilled forward. I don't know if putting him in a fourth line role is setting him up for success. If you look at what the Islanders did to Nino Niederreiter at the beginning of his career, he was a 5th overall pick. They had him playing on the 4th line with Jay Pandolfo and Marty Reasoner. I think all Islander fans can attest. That was just painful to see. He looked bad. He became unhappy, and he was ultimately traded for Cal Clutterbuck. And, the deal worked out for both sides because Clutterbuck went on to be a longtime Islander, and he filled his role, filled it very well. But I think that early stages of Niederreiter's career held him back a little bit by being misused. And I think the Rangers would be doing the same thing with Othman if they just brought him up and played him on the 4th line. I think Othman's a guy that you need to play on the 1st or 2nd line. So I don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong. I just don't see it happening. Mikey Eberle was named Seattle's captain. And signed an extension when he was a UFA and his name was thrown around the deadline. So the Kraken aren't going to trade Eberle. If anybody, Yanni Gourde, who's hurt, but that's the guy that they would trade, not Eberle. So I don't think that Eberle is going anywhere to the Rangers or Islanders. Islander hockey is fun again. Listen, when your team loses, it sucks. It is. It's bad. And even when it's in your team's best interest to maybe lose, it's hard to root against your team. So like seeing the Islanders win and put themselves back into playoff contention, it's good. Obviously a lot of fans you're disappointed. You don't want it, but at the end of the day, I think anybody wants to see their team win. So hopefully they can keep it going. Let's see. David saying Detroit looked terrible. Uncle Fester was the coach. True. Lalonde, he was bad. McClellan came in and he's done a good job. But I look at their goaltending. Not in love with it. Their overall depth. They got Raymond's fantastic. Larkin's fantastic. Simon Edmondson, he's good, really good young player. Kane is still contributes, but I don't know, something about the team. I maybe it's just kind of going off last year and years prior, but I just think the Red Wings are going to fall off. I just mentioned Gord. Yeah, he's injured. I think he's supposed to be back around the time of the trade deadline. So I don't think him getting hurt means he's not getting traded anymore. I think a team still will trade for him. And yeah, honestly, I think he'd be perfect. I think Yanni Gord playing on the Rangers' third line would be a great fit. He knows how to win. He's a winner. I mean, hell, any Islander fan can tell you he killed us. In that game 7, his shorthanded goal might have been the reason why the Islanders eventually don't win the Stanley Cup. He sunk them. So yeah, he's a good all around player. Has jam. He's fast. He could score. He's the type of guy you want in the playoffs. So I think if he's available, the Rangers certainly go after him. Would you ever go willing to get Zegras? I said that in our last show we talked about this. Like, I would have never thought that Tony DeAngelo was a Lou type of player, and then Lou signed him. So that just threw me all off because I would say that Zegras is a guy that Lou would never touch. But Zegras, I mean, he's similar to Barzal, and he's like a flashy player. He's skilled, which the Islanders need skill. But I don't know. Like, I feel like if Nelson walked in the offseason, Zegras would be a good replacement to fill the hole at center. But I do think he's not really a Lou guy. But again, I was wrong with DeAngelo, so maybe I'd be wrong again. But I would be surprised. And I know they mentioned Zegras. I think it was Dreger that Zegras could be available, and I think he certainly is. I think everybody has known that. But that's a move I think will happen in the offseason. I'm not so sure if they would trade him right now, but we'll see. Palms. Palmieri, I feel differently about. Like, obviously Nelson's a longtime Islander, and where he can go down all time in the Islanders, all-time scoring leaders. Palmieri doesn't have that attachment. Like, I would trade Kyle Palmieri even if the Islanders are 2 points out of a playoff spot. And that's just because I think they can. I think they could still make the playoffs with losing a Palmieri. But again, I mean, that's just me. Lou's not gonna. I highly doubt Lou would do it. So let's see. And honestly, you're right. Like, I think it is good when both teams are doing well. When I was younger, like, 18, 19, even, in my 20s, like, just like I was on, I die on Islander fan. I'm like, screw the Rangers. I'd, be happy when they lost. And I don't feel that way anymore. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm never gonna sit there and root for the Rangers, but like, I don't wish for the Rangers to, ever lose, to be honest with you. So, but if they could both make the playoffs, that would be awesome. But this particular year, I think there's still too many teams. Like I said, there's, Tampa Bay, Boston. I don't know if it's possible that both of them can get in, but it would be fantastic if they did. Yeah, that would be a huge loss for Canada. I saw he got hurt, but then he came back to the game, so I was thinking maybe he avoided injury. But I saw before, I think Friedman said that he wasn't practicing, so that would be a huge loss for Canada if Crosby's not able to go. Johnny's saying I think Zegras is overrated. I do agree there. I don't think I think he's super skilled. I just don't know if he's the guy that you really win with. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he proves eventually he does get traded somewhere, and he does well in the playoffs and helps the team win. But right now, I don't think he's a guy that you win with. Patella fracture for Barzy. Where, just out of curiosity, is that some sort of inside info you have? Or, I mean, I haven't looked at my phone. I highly doubt the Islanders would disclose that. But where did you hear that? But I guess, it does make a little sense, because I said earlier when I saw the video, it looked like it hit him like above the knee, but you couldn't really tell. So that actually, I mean, maybe that does make sense. Maybe that's actually where it hit him. But that's not good. You never want to fracture your kneecap. That's just not good. But hopefully he can come back for the regular season. Yeah, and that is true. I think Pittsburgh is probably poised to make more moves. You've heard Erik Karlsson's name out there a little bit. Obviously his salary's high, so I don't know how many teams would be willing to take it, but he's a guy that could move. Let's see, you have, Anthony Beauvillier is a guy, maybe it could be a low-cost addition to a team. Where they move a Brian Rust, possible. So it's they have some pieces to sell. It's just I don't think any of their big pieces like Crosby, Malkin, Letang would go anywhere unless they actually said otherwise. Yeah, and ain't this the truth? you'll end up in the Hudson River or the East River in a sack like Kramer from Seinfeld. Lou makes people disappear. Let's see, 287-day recovery for that. If that's true. What's interesting about it though is he skated off on his own power. So I'm like, all right, he's not. It's not like he wasn't not putting pressure on it either. So I was like, oh, how bad could it be? So that's why if it is something like that, I'm surprised because he did skate off on his own power, and I would have thought with that kind of injury, you can't put any weight on it. But I guess who knows? Any legit shot? Beauvillier comes back. Yeah, I mean it's because let's face it, Anthony Beauvillier, what is he going to cost to acquire? A 4th round pick. So when you're talking a low cost like that, yeah, I guess it really all depends on, how big of a move Lou wants to make. That would be like a minor move similar to, him signing D'Angelo or trading for Provenance, just like a depth player. But it wouldn't be a bad option. Feels miserably. It was worth it for Aura. I don't like this either. And not to get into politics, but I mean, what's going on over with Russia has nothing to do with the NHL players that are from Russia shouldn't be punished for it. I just think it's silly to not allow Russia to partake in playing the Olympics because of that. Don't punish them. That's just, for me, it's not fair. But unfortunately it's the climate of the world right now. And I don't think that there's really going to be any way around it. I just don't like it. So I have two Bernedoodles. One is 4 and the other is 1. And then I have another like Havanese type of dog that's like 13 or 14. She's really old, and she's the one that actually makes the majority of the noise. But they're a handful. So, and if they're barking right now because my daughter just got off the bus and should be walking in the front door 2 minutes, so they're going nuts. Saying also worth noting, Finland, Sweden, not fit. Yeah, heard that. They're not, and I think they're appeasing those two countries. But it's truly not. It's truly not best. Like for instance, I know I was talking about them not being allowed in the Olympics, but even in relation to this four nations tournament, the fact that like Czechia is not involved in it is ridiculous. The last Olympics, they're the team that won the gold medal, and they're not playing in this tournament. And I get the NHL's viewpoint. It's because they want this tournament to just be NHL players. In a country like that, I don't know if they could field a team of just NHL players, and they only want guys playing in the NHL, not guys playing in Europe. So, but still, I think to truly have a best-on-best tournament, which is what they're billing this 4 nations as, have more, have more countries involved. But then, their counteract to that is, well, there's not enough time. You need more than 2 weeks probably for that, or et cetera, et cetera. But I I would have liked to see like a guy like Leon Draisaitl playing in this. He's one of the best players in the world, and he's not represented in this tournament because Germany's not playing. So yeah, we'll just have to wait to the Olympics when you can see more of the countries involved. But I do agree. I think Russia should be involved. And honestly, last part of this is we're all being robbed of a Ilya Sorokin and Igor Shesterkin being teammates because it's certainly never going to happen while they're in the NHL. So we would have got to see them on the same team. That goaltending duo would have been quite outstanding with likely Vasilevsky as the third goalie. But that would have been cool to see. Nonetheless, we are not. Yes, Wicked. Yzerman is untouchable. I don't want to trade Danny Nelson either. So yeah, those guys shouldn't go anywhere. The Islanders need players like them. Also, Quinn Finley from Wisconsin, who was leading the whole NCAA in scoring. He's another guy that I think they should keep. But I keep all them. And to your surprise, I would trade the first. Again, Mackenzie said that the bottom of the draft class, like from picks 15 or 20 down, it's a weak class. So after hearing that, honestly, if the Islanders couldn't get a player that was under team control and young for the first round pick, I would do it. Christy's saying, Anthony, what do you think? Only 3 weeks worth of D'Angelo Boca's permanence makes Dobson expendable. Yeah, no, and that's a fair point, Chris. It is. I think for me, it's just that when it's completely obvious that how their defense is moving the puck and playing since these three guys came in and Pulock and Dobson went out. Pulock's not a fast skater. He's a big lumbering guy. And Dobson, well, Dobson's not slow by any means. He's a good skater. But he's also got a lot of size too. So sometimes watching him, it's a little like kind of like lanky and maybe a little awkward. Peruvinich, D'Angelo, and Boquist, they're all like smooth, solid skaters, and they just move the puck and transition it better. And while Dobson is more talented than those three guys in terms of pure talent, those three guys are just fitting in the system that was playing better. And I think that, for the Islanders, they need another high-end piece to go along with Horvat and Barzell. And, Noah Dobson is the one piece on the roster that can help bring that player in. So that's why I'm okay with trading Noah Dobson. And again, I'm not just saying I've given away either. Like, for instance, I'm not trading him for Brock Besser in a deal. But you better believe I am trading Noah Dobson in a deal for a guy like Elias Pettersson. Not that this guy's available. I'm just kind of giving you the example of a player I would move him for. Like if Buffalo said, all right, we're a joke, we're a circus, we need to change things up, and they decided to go scorch earth and trade Tage Thompson, I would move Noah Dobson for a guy like that. So you get the idea. I'm not going to give him away from anybody, but if they can get back a player that's, anywhere from, that's like 26 or younger and under team control, yeah, I would definitely be open to moving them. Let's see. Speaking of Clutterbuck, Rangers sign him on a PTO. Honestly, Mike, that's not. I don't know. Like, obviously, this is the first year he's not even technically retired, but this is the first year he hasn't played NHL hockey. I don't know, if he already mailed it in, like in terms of his conditioning and his body, and he just gave up, or he still, keeps in shape. Because if he did, then maybe he'd be willing to come back. Because one of the reasons why, Matt Martin was on a PTO this year, and then he eventually got a contract. The reason why, from what I understand, Clutterbuck didn't is because Clutterbuck, once he hit free agency, he didn't want a PTO. He wanted a guaranteed contract. He did not want a PTO. And I also think he wanted to stay close because this is his home, he's not, from what I understand, like a guy like Lee or Nelson, while they obviously live here, raise their family here, and the offseason they go to like Minnesota. I think a guy like Clutterbuck was a Long Island guy all year round, so I didn't think Clutterbuck. I don't think he wanted to leave the area, so that kind of all equaled him not getting another shot. So yeah, I mean, if the Rangers called him and wanted to sign him to a deal for the rest of the season, prorated league minimum, and he was interested in still playing, yeah, maybe he would, because I do think that could be a fit. I mean, with that said, though, there are probably better fourth line players that are available that are still playing that can be more effective. I'm going to say the Leafs, only because the Bruins are, right? They're that bubble team. They're kind of like in the same boat as the Islanders and Rangers and Blue Jackets. So they might not make a panic move because them making the playoffs isn't really a given. Whereas the Leafs probably would, because they're certainly going to make the playoffs, even though honestly Ottawa's not far away from them, but they're going to make the playoffs. And I guess they feel that they can make that all-in move because they know that they're going to make it, and they badly want to finally go further than the second round. So yeah. I read that wrong. You said my bet is Boston or the Leafs. I thought you were saying between the two of them. Yeah, between the two of them, it's the Leafs. If it's the first team to make a panic move, I would say, if you're considering all of the conference, it's tough. I'm going to say Tampa Bay. I'm going to say Tampa Bay because, they're a bubble team too right now. And, obviously they're starting to come down from, when they went to the Stanley Cup Finals 3 years in a row. I think that they want to try to extend their window. Although I think their cup window's closed, but I think they still want to try to extend it and, kind of get in, finish third rather than a wild card. And this is the first year in a while where they actually have a lot of cap space. They don't have to play the LTIR game. So I could see the Lightning making a big move, to be honest with you, and try to, put themselves in better position to combat the Leafs, the Bruins, the Senators. Yeah, 2 points that would be hilarious. I would honestly love to see it. I would absolutely love to see it. I don't know if it'll happen, but I would just die laughing if it did, because that team every year. Well, first off, their fans think like they're the best team in the world, but the fact that they always like kind of dominate the regular season and then get to the playoffs and flame out. If they lose again, it would be icing on the cake, because that team, and we've talked about it on this channel for years and years. Like every year they fail to meet their goal. It seems like in the offseason they're going to blow up, break up the core four, and then they never do. They just bring back the same exact team. And it happened again this summer. Everyone thought that they were fine. Oh, this is going to be the year they move a core four member. They're going to trade Marner, or they're going to do something huge. Instead, they re-signed Nylander, which obviously looking out to be a good move. But they re-signed Nylander, and when they did that, they took the option to do anything other than moving Marner, and then they didn't move him either, and they didn't move Tavares. So like this team, they keep doing the same thing over and over again. And the funny thing is, watch them lose again in the first round or second round or whatever, and then they re-sign Marner to a mega deal because apparently he wants to stay. They re-sign Marner, and then they also re-sign Tavares this time just at a much lesser rate, and they essentially bring back everybody again, even though two of them were UFAs. Watch that happen, and if that happened, that would be hilarious, and it would show they haven't learned from their mistakes. Matthews, Nylander, Tavares, Marner, all good players, but when you lose year after year with that core and you don't change it up, it's just lunacy to me. And honestly, I think if they lose in the first round again, I don't think Trey Leving will go because he's relatively new, but I think. I think that Brendan Shanahan would be done. I think Shanahan would be kicked to the curb. They'd say, "See you later, Shanaplan, it's over." But that's my guess. If the Leafs fail again, Shanahan's out. But man, oh man, would it be hilarious if the Leafs re-signed both Marner and Tavares and brought back the same band. Because nothing would change again next year. It just wouldn't. Let's see. And yes, David, you're right. Marner had no movement clause. Tavares had no movement clause. Couldn't be moved. But listen, at least with Marner, and we talked about this with Mark and his obsession with no movement clauses, saying it's possible when it was a Benajad. There are ways to get around it. I mean, they could have legitimately actively pursued deals from Marner and then approached him and be like, "Listen, we have a deal for you. And are you going to say yes or no?" And even if you said no, at least it would have gave him the notion that they're serious rather than just all the speculation. And then maybe when they come to him the next time with a deal, maybe he says yes. But I think there could have been ways where you could have got him to move the no movement clause if you pressured him enough. And they didn't do it. It's just, you can't. I know it's easier said than done, but there are ways to do it. And the fact that they just took the easy way out and just brought back the same band again is just, it's just lunacy to me. I don't understand it. Christy Tavares will be willing to take $6 million. Yeah, I mean, he's actually having a good year. So I'm curious to see what he gets in the offseason in terms of his next contract. And no, there will be no reunion with the Islanders, even though how ironic that would be, and it would be hilarious. But I tend to think that he's going to re-sign with the Leafs. Who had said Rosser pondering a Jordan Kyrou trade would be nice, but I would say St. Louis to move him, although their D could use young defensemen. Yeah, I haven't looked again. I'd have to see that. I didn't see him post that. I'll take a quick look now. But I don't see why St. Louis would do that at all. It just doesn't make sense to me. He's a good young player. I mean, yeah, their D, Colton Parayko and Torrey Krug hasn't played this year. And, Justin Falk. So, yeah, I guess they could use a young defenseman like Noah Dobson there. And that would be your prototypical hockey trade. But I would be surprised if the Blues made that deal. Would I do it, though? I know I referenced I would do it for a guy like Pettersson or Thompson. Kyrou. That's a tough one. I'd have to examine his stats and really look at that. I think that's the one I'd ultimately say yes, but it's not a move where I would say fire up the facts. 4 times 8 like Stamkos. It's possible if he continues having the numbers that he's putting up, he very well might. He certainly would know what to do with the pain. Oh, let me start on the Bills. I'm still not over that, and even saying stuff like I don't even want to watch the Super Bowl. I am that sour over what transpired. Yeah, Sensei throw garbage on his ice. Yeah, the Sharks are one of the teams that he met with that year when he was a free agent. St. Louis had a young defenseman, Prudence. They said, "Nah, Kent Fowler." Yeah, Prudence wasn't given a chance there in St. Louis, and right now he's making he's making a case for himself for the Islanders, and good for him. Hopefully, he continues playing this way, and the Islanders re-sign him. Yeah, they are. They're one of those bubble teams, but still, you would think like Kyrou and Robert Thomas are guys they want to build around. Trading Kyrou, I don't know. I don't understand that one. Yeah, they want to kick. So is sports, right? One time you love a player, and next you hate him. So we'll go about 10 more minutes, fellas. Appreciate you, all of you. 67 is 67 of you watching me right now. I love talking hockey to all you guys, and didn't want to chip you out of a show with Mark crying in bed and not sucking it up. But all right, so here's a follow-up. I mentioned Kevin Weeks. For you that didn't see it, Kevin Weeks yesterday had his famous eye emoji in the picture of Buffalo. Half hour ago he said, speaking of sources, I'm told there's been plenty of expressions of interest from clubs in Buffalo Sabres forward Dylan Cousins, including Canadiens, Flames, Maple Leafs, Red Wings. So again, not too shocking. There was the report that Cousins has been available. TSN mentioned the Flames specifically, so not groundbreaking news by him, but at least he followed up his cryptic tweet from yesterday. Dylan Cousins, by the way, Elliot Friedman, Minnesota claims Hinostroza, who was waived yesterday. Just a little minor move there. Dylan Cousins he had a really good year 2 years ago. I believe he had like 60. I think he had like a 60-point year, guys. I don't have his numbers in front of me, but pretty sure he had like a 60-point year. Looked like he was going to be a really, really good player. And then since then, he hasn't been the same. So I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think they can get for Cousins? I think, like, I guess he's young enough where a team might give up a first for him, or maybe a hockey trade. I mean, Calgary's interested. I heard like Rasmus Anderson, but I can't see the Flames giving up a solid defenseman like Rasmus Anderson for Dylan Cousins. I mean, maybe if Bowen Byram went back the other way, possibly. But I just think the Sabres need a bigger change than just trading Dylan Cousins. And not to offend any Sabre fans, if any of you watching, but again, that team is just a train wreck. I mean, they've been bad for so long. Like, I'm not saying trade Rasmus Dahlin. I think you build around him. But at this point right now, things have gone. Why not trade Tage Thompson? You know, really start a retool, because clearly it's not working. I mean, what that team can't get out of its own way. Every year they're expected to take the next step, and not only have they not taken the next step, guys, they're literally last in the East. Like, I know they've won 4 in a row, but I mean, you've seen this from the Sabres before. It's like they'll win, they'll go on a hot streak, and you'll say to yourself, okay, maybe they're finally going to get it, and then it just never happens. It just literally never happens. So yeah, trading Dylan Cousins, I mean, is that a shakeup? I guess, but you just have to wonder at what point do they like start over, replace Kevin Adams, and they go through another rebuild, which I feel for Sabre fans at that point, because that would be painful, because like they've already been rebuilding. It's like, well, what have we been doing for the last 10 years then? So like, so yeah, that would suck for them, but maybe it's needed. Maybe they need to get a different general manager in there. Change the culture, right? Like, you got to change the culture. When you have your best player in Tage Thompson almost get his head knocked off by Stefan Noesen the other night, and literally no one on the ice does anything about it, that just speaks volumes. It really does. And Alex Tuck said they talked about it in the locker room. They said it would never happen again. But like, how do you let that happen? Just how do you let that happen? It just doesn't, like, it's just like Matthew Barnaby talked about it. He ripped him on Twitter. It's just sickening. So like, that team needs to make major changes. And I don't know if trading Dylan Cousins alone is enough. Maybe rebuild around Rasmus Dahlin and J.J. Peterka. Kulich looks like a good young player. Jack Quinn, but maybe you move a Tage Thompson for a haul, because now he would get a haul. He'd bring back a lot. Trade Alex Tuck. He's a good player. He'd bring back decent pieces, and just start over and maybe build it the right way. But culture is important. You need to, and similar, like before Lou came in, the Islanders, they used to call it the country club. I mean, you had Garth Snow and his cronies there, and there's no accountability. Like, Lou came in and he made the franchise respectable again. They're taken seriously. They operated in a professional manner, and I think that's what the Sabres need. Hizapula now said, "This worked once. Let's bring back the glory days." For real. It's just that they make questionable decisions, and if they do trade Dylan Cousins, they should really make sure they get it right. At least get back a piece that's going to help you long term. Even though Cousins is young himself, so I have a feeling that would be a hockey trade. Let's see what else, if anything, going on here. There's not really much of anything. But I am curious to see if there are more more trades coming down here in the next couple of days. I think the last game before the break is on. Let's see here, NHL app. Sunday, Sunday the 9th. That's the last 2 games, afternoon games, 2 games on the schedule that day. So 4 days from now, at this point, do teams try to make more trades in before the break, or is it really going to be relatively quiet? And then when the season picks up again, we'll see the action. Not really sure, but it'll be interesting. Thoughts about Utah? Utah's a good young team. They got some nice pieces coming up. I know Logan Cooley's hurt right now, but he's a great player. Clayton Keller's still a leader of that team. Schmaltz is good. You have Lawson Krause is a good hard-nosed player. Barrett Hayden, he's still not where he needs to be, but you don't write him off yet. So I like them in terms of the playoff chase right now. They are 6 points out of a spot. So again, still in it, kind of not. New owner. I think that maybe if they get closer by the deadline, maybe he makes a splash. They have assets. But my guess is they miss out, but next year they get in with their new name, wherever they're going to be, the Mammoth or Outlaws. But definitely a good future in Utah. All right, guys. They're going to call it a day for now. Appreciate you all watching with me for the last almost hour and a half talking hockey. Again, for those of you watching later, Rangers Bruins, hopefully they pull through for you, because that's going to be that's a huge game. As I said at the start of the show, it's a huge game. If the Rangers lose tonight, they go down 8 points on Boston. But on the flip side, if they win tonight, I think they would only be 4 points out of a playoff spot. So, Rangers need to get the job done tonight. It's a big game. Bruins, obviously, the last time they played in Boston, the Bruins got the better of them. So we'll see what happens. I would imagine it's going to be Swayman versus Igor again, right? So we'll see, but hopefully they pull through for you guys. And for the Islanders, they're off today and tomorrow, and then they got the Winnipeg Jets on Friday, and that's going to be a hell of a game. You're talking the best goalie in the league in Connor Hellebuck versus the hottest goalie in the league right now in Ilya Sorokin. So that'll be a good goaltending matchup. And if the Islanders are to win that game, they're going to need Sorokin to keep playing the way he has been. Hopefully they pick up another 2 points and, maybe get within 1 point of a playoff spot, depending what happens, tonight and tomorrow between them. So we'll see. Needless to say, both of our New York teams, they're in the hunt here, but they're going to need to pick up a couple more points here going into the break and best position themselves to maybe make a move prior to the trade deadline when the season resumes. So we'll see what happens. And yes, Jay, you're right. They played the Wild last night, and I think Swayman was in goal. So maybe the Rangers are getting Korpisalo tonight, which actually would be probably beneficial for the Rangers. Although Korpisalo actually hasn't been that bad. Yeah, if Kevin Adams would do that deal, I think Chris Drury should fire that fax through the machine right now. But anyway, thanks a lot, guys. Talk to you, and we'll be back next Wednesday, or who knows, maybe Philk even does a little spot later today if he deems so fit. If not, we'll see you next Wednesday. And as always, a big trade broke in the NHL, especially if it involved one of our teams, we'd get on here for a special show, which this time of year you can never count out. So, all right, thanks, guys. Talk to you.